Jive Hive Jeff from Two Hacks Garage. Well, in the previous videos you saw us do, we went ahead and got the Wyand intake manifold, the tunnel ram, on for the 521 cubic inch big block Ford stroker. We also installed the harmonic balancer on this. It's an aftermarket unit, and as you saw with a lot of other things on this build, we did have to do some modifications. Along with modifications, we did modify this intake manifold to install the new water pump. This is a high flow water pump for this application. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to actually install this. But what we did is we actually tapped the intake manifold here on this inlet to thread a pipe in there instead of having a little shorty metal piece. The only reason we did that is to have a better seal and to help prevent any water leaks from happening. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to install a water pump on a big block Ford. Now, this water pump here is an application for 1970 and up model. The reason I went with this one is because I am putting on a CVF serpentine kit for this engine. So with that, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go ahead and we're going to get working on this and get this water pump installed to get this engine buttoned up. Hopefully, pretty soon, I get it back to my garage, start installing the serpentine kit, and getting it prepped to go into that car. With that, some of these bolts in here you'll see come out. The reason being is we are going to install some stainless fasteners in here, and I'm not going to use the stock ones. I do have like an ARP style with this. However, we decided to go with the Allen head style on this just because it looks a little bit nicer. Another one of those little cosmetic things we chose to do. So with that, guys, what we're going to do is we're going to get installing this water pump on this 521 cubic inch big block Ford. So I tell you what, let's get at it. It's a nice day. See you soon. All right, so part of the first step in this is we're going to clean up this surface here. You can see a little bit of overspray. Some of that's not bad, it's pretty thin, but some of it's kind of chunky. So all I'm going to do is go in there and clean that up, and I'll wipe it down with some brake cleaner because you do kind of want a clean surface. So when you put these gaskets on there, it mates perfectly fine, and you don't have any chance of water leak. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get cleaning on that. See you in a few. So as you saw, we did actually thread this part here. So what we're doing now is just actually putting one of the fittings in. Stainless steel fitting. Use a little bit of sealant on that.
It is, and we're almost out of thread. If it don't tighten up, I'll be putting about 3 wraps of tape on it. Now there it goes.
Starting to tighten up. So we did run the threads that we created deep enough in there. So now it is just getting that nice and tight. Jimmy did use like is it a PTFE sealer?
I don't know, it was blue.
Oh.
And all the farmers use it. It's all good for the chemical junk and all that. It's good for about anything, including gasoline.
So there's a sealant on there that's...
It's been on the fittings in my fuel tank of my hot rod over there, and it had gas in it for 6-8 months, and it's never leaked a drop. Yeah, that ought to work.
There we go. So the stainless fitting is now in there. It's nice and tight. So now what we got to do is do the other fitting on the back side of the water pump. All right, so the next step is we're going to put the same stainless fitting on the back of the water pump. The stuff that Jimmy is using for the sealant is True Blue pipe thread sealant. Vibration resistant, contains the PTFE, fast dry, flexible set. So that's what we were referring to earlier on doing that. So we were putting the stainless fitting in the back of the water pump. Going to thread that all the way in there.
So this has been in combat? Oh no, it says PTFE.
Not PTSD.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Somebody probably get mad over that. You got that on still?
Yeah. So what we're doing now is just getting this cranked down, and
explain to them that we have to cut them off.
Yeah, so the actual fittings itself here on both of them, we actually had to cut those down. It was a longer barb fitting, and the distance between the water pump and the actual intake manifold is really short.
I don't think we're done yet.
So as usual with this, we're having to modify things. This whole entire engine build has been test fit, modify, until we get our desired result. So now we're just getting it in there to see what we need to do as far as.
It's called Ford.
Yes, it is called Ford. This big blue Ford motor has been fighting us the whole way. So we will go and show you what we're talking about here in a minute. And so yeah, we got the fitting in. Now it's test fitting to see how close it is.
Some people cuss
to the
small
whole
block Chevys, but all the parts fit.
Yeah. All right, so as you can see here, how much little room there is. There was a cheap, really small tube that you put in, and then there was another fitting on the back of this that just really wasn't that good. So we're just making this almost a seal-proof application. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut that down, and in between the two, it's going to be the right size hose with clamps. I do not have the other piece handy, but it was a really thin gauge metal, and it went in this hole, and it was actually loose. So all we did was tap this, putting in stainless fittings with the pipe sealant, and these are just a few bucks at the hardware store. And once we get our measurement, you cut it down to the length you need on the other side of the ones on the water pump, and you'll have a very good, solid, not only fitting in there that's not going to leak, but a hose that goes in between the two with a lot of surface area to clamp down onto. And so it seems like a little bit overkill, but at the same time, it's going to prevent us from having water leaks and having to do all this over again. So we're going to go take care of that now. See you in a few. All right, so what we ended up doing there is we took the fittings, we cut them down, and put a little bit of round edge on it. Same thing with this one here. So you can see it was like a barbed fitting, and we just machined them down. You can actually cut them. Luckily, we have a lathe. We just took a lathe and machined those down. So now, when you put your water pump on, like so, you have these here like this. Now this all stays together, so what we're going to do is we measure 1.5 inches. We're going to get some of the hose, and on here, and we'll clamp it. We'll have a nice tight seal. So the next step after that will actually be putting this on. See you soon. So as you can see now, what Jimmy's doing, all he is doing is taking the weather stripping cement adhesive, whatever you want to call it, sealant, and he's just going to put it along the gasket there. Just a thin bead is needed, and he will lay it down on the actual backing plate. Big block Fords, they do have a backing plate between the actual pump and the timing chain cover. So whenever you're getting one of these, if you're going to either reuse it. If not, you're going to have to get a new one.
The reason I think they even have this thing there, from what I was told, to be honest with you, was it has to do with the water moving all the time and the way people don't change antifreeze, and it loses its rust, or not rust, but its corrosion, whether it be on aluminum or steel. Rust on steel, obviously, corrosion on aluminum. It loses its corrosion inhibitors, is because that's why they put this plate on here, because it puts the water where it needs to be and keeps the pump from circulating the water right on the timing cover. I got to get him something.
All right, we're going to let that dry up, and we'll be right back. All right, so the second step of this is actually getting the other gasket to the back of the actual water pump itself. Little tip, what you want to do is you want to take your gasket before you put any of the weather strip cement on there, and you want to lay your gasket on there because it only goes one way. So you just want to get it in place, and obviously since you're going to be sticking this to this, you're going to do it on the back side. If you try doing it the other way or whatever, it doesn't work. It's only one way. So line it up, know where you're at, flip it down, and just start adding a little bit of cement. A little bit of this does go a long way. Like I said, Jimmy's been using it for a long time. That being said, whatever method you prefer, go ahead and use that. We are just going by the method that Jimmy has been doing for a very long time. So we are going to go ahead and continue to use that method, seeing he's used it for over 30 years. I'm going to trust him on it that it works. And yeah, let's go from there. He does call this the yellow death. The reason why, if you've seen in a previous video, this stuff, once it is fully cured, which takes about 24 hours or so. So mind you, with that, when you are doing this water pump, you do kind of want to let it sit up a little bit before you fire it, because you really don't want any of this adhesive or any of the sealant or anything like that to get into your water jackets or into your actual radiator. That will cause a radiator to get plugged, and that is absolutely not good. Cause cooling issues. So as you see there, we went ahead and got that into place. This stuff does dry pretty quick, so the whole name of the game is to get it on quick and get it on there. So with that, all I'm doing is I'm going to line it up on the holes here, like that. Kind of tap it into place. Get it lined up with them holes there. And if you saw, I didn't put it here or on here. I already had lined this gasket up and make sure that it didn't really need it in those spots. This will actually hit the backing plate itself. So as you can see, I got the holes lined up in there. I'm just going to kind of press this down to make sure it's got a nice good seal. So once this actually somewhat cures up, like I said, it does dry fast. It's held in place nicely. We're going to go ahead and install the actual water pump on to the timing chamber. So there you go. Pretty simple. So yeah, here we go. Next step, here we come. Okay, here's the next step of this. So like I said, this does have the backing plate with it. You can see that stuck on there, that stuck on there. And instead of trying to get this mounted to the actual timing cover, it's a whole lot easier to sandwich everything together in place. So once again, you want to get things test fitted in there. And what we're going to do is, even though there's a gasket, we're going to put a little silicone on here. I'm going to use the same RTV gray, and we'll get that stuck on there. So when that kind of tacks up a little bit, we're actually going to put the water pump all on at once. So basically, I'm going to do the exact same thing I did before, and just a little bit of silicone. I'll spread this around with my fingers. You don't need a whole lot with this, just a thin layer on this. It's just a little bit of added protection, nothing crazy. Like I said, you just need a little bit on there. That just helps not only bond this surface together, but it also helps just give it a little bit more protection so there's no water leaks. I'm just evenly spreading this throughout, nothing crazy, nothing really thick. Just getting it on there, especially around the holes. That's kind of the main important part, really, on some of these applications. It's not going to hurt anything when this is dry. You know, if you get a little bit on the outside, you can just scrape it off. But like I said, it's just a real thin layer. Nothing's going to protrude out. Like I said, the important part is really somewhat around those holes, because I know from past experience that's where some things seem to leak more often than not. Nothing more annoying than having a leaky water pump. I'm just doing a little bit of time, as you see, just getting that smeared around. Alright, well, as you can see there, pretty much got her. On these parts here that don't have metal behind there, I am going to go just a tad bit thicker to make sure there is a little bit of a sealing area. As you can see behind there's no metal. When I press that on there, I just want to make sure that it's going to have a proper seal with the actual backing plate. Before you just go sticking on there, make sure, once again, that you do have things lined up properly, because these do only go one way. And go ahead and stick that on there. Get your holes lined up. Just like that. Yep. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that cure up just a tad. Nothing too long. And I am going to go put it back on the timing cover. So it'll be the final part of the installation. So yeah, pretty simple. So I will see you guys here in a few.